99% of the previous generation's NFTs are not going to make a comeback. They're just not. You're going to have a few blue chips from last cycle, and then you're going to have a new entrant of NFTs that are actually fundamentally very different from last cycle's NFTs. In the same way that 2017's like tokens, a lot of them were just kind of fluff. And then 2021's batch, you had a lot of like actual products being built. Welcome to the 1 to 1 Million podcast, your weekly crypto alpha for those who never quit. Today we're talking to Spike from Persona about NFTs. Are they dead, or are we going to see an NFT comeback this cycle? We dive into how the NFT meta has changed during the bear market, the shift towards building NFT IP brands, similar to what Pudgy Penguins is doing. And we dive heavily into Persona, their challenges launching during the bear market, and where they're headed from here. Let's dive in. It's great to have you back on, Spike. I guess to start off, can you briefly explain for just like the average person, what is an NFT?
Ooh, thanks for having me back. No, super nice to be here. What is an NFT? A non-fungible token, I guess would be the base definition. I think an NFT at its core is just what it enables people to have is like a true ownership of a digital asset that you know is non-fungible, meaning that the asset that you have, you can be sure that digitally no one else can have the same one. And that's this true ownership and the fact that it's non-fungible, basically, that gives a lot of value to some avatars, some digital collectibles that you've seen out there that have been performing nicely since 2021, because you can be sure that you are the only one with this amazing persona that has those specific traits, and there is none others that have it. And both the fact that it's on-chain, so you're sure you have the ownership of it, but also non-fungible, meaning that you are sure there is none other that are exactly like that, is the bit of the magic there, I think, for collectors and Web3 people. And that's the difference with normal tokens that are fungible. Basically, if I have one Bitcoin and you have one Bitcoin, we have essentially the same the same asset.
Yeah, that's a really great explanation. And just to kind of hit back on that again. So what you said is, so like a token, like if I had one Bitcoin, you had one Bitcoin, those are fungible. So like they're interchangeable. Like one Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin. Where a non-fungible token or an NFT is they're unique assets. And you said it's like the idea behind an NFT is just a digital asset. That's all it is a digital asset. And so I think a lot of people maybe have different preconceptions of what NFTs are. It's like they think of maybe a specific style of art, or they think of these 10,000 PFP collections that were really popular last cycle. When in reality, NFT is a very flexible thing. It can actually be a lot of different things. And really, at its base core, it's just a digital asset.
Absolutely. We've seen great use cases, for example, for concert tickets, to be sure that you have only one, for in-game assets as well, to empower players and have true ownership of those and so on. But it's not only the avatar collections that we've seen the most of, I think, since the last bull run. It's actually, we have a lot of use cases. You could potentially use it for any digital asset where you would love to have like a stronger ownership of it, basically.
Yeah, and I see a lot of posts on Twitter with a lot of people saying, like NFTs are dead, they're never coming back, they were just like a fad last cycle. What are your thoughts on that? Like when people say NFTs are dead, they're never coming back, what is that like? What are your thoughts on it? Because obviously you've launched this NFT project, Persona, and it's a lot more than maybe what we saw last cycle, and we'll hit on that a little bit later in the video. But what are your thoughts when you hear something like that?
Yeah, I think as a space, Web3 tends to make more than what is currently there, and that's what we've seen in the last bull run. We had NFTs which were really great, and they got like introduced, and we had a big bull run out of it. And I think it was deserved in a sense, but during the bull run, we made way more out of it than what was currently there, in the sense that we started with NFTs and then it was like, okay, metaverse, and we already like imagine like it was taking over absolutely everything. In reality, I think NFTs have good use cases that make sense and that I think will prevail on the long run, that's for sure. But they will not replace every kind of digital asset that we see currently, because we don't need that necessarily. We don't need to replace soft currency in a game because it has no real like monetary value, and we don't need to give it some, basically. So I think that's where like a misconception came from, is that as soon as something like starts building up in Web3, we love to extrapolate it and like, okay, that's going to replace absolutely everything. I think in reality, it will find its use case on the long run. That's for sure. We see that now, and we'll have another bull run, and we'll have other new use cases that will continue to build up. But it will not replace absolutely everything. It will be for digital assets where it makes sense that you want to assert its uniqueness, assert its ownership. And there are a crazy ton of use cases for that when you look at games, when you look at absolutely any type of digital product. So for me, I don't see it going anywhere for the simple fact that as humans, we spend more and more of our time in the digital world, right? Right now I'm in the Alps, but I barely got outside. I mostly play games and I'm still on my PC all day long. And I think that's natural that we want to ensure that we can have valuable assets in this digital world, and we want to ensure that we have a way to show that to other people, basically. I want to make sure that I have like the equivalent of my cool frame that I have at home, but in this digital world where now I spend most of my time on, and I want to be able to showcase that to my friends in this world. So for me, there is absolutely no way it fades just because of this simple principle. I think it's a basic human need that we are developing with the fact that now we are most of our time on PCs and mobiles and apps, basically.
No, that was really good. It made me think of like early websites. Like I remember really early on in the internet, there was this guy that like sold every pixel on his website for like money, and he made like $1 million like selling every pixel of the website. And you could go visit it, and people were buying up ad space from the pixels. And there's a lot of like almost gimmicky ways people were using the internet when it first started. And then we had the .com bubble. People were saying, this was all just a big fad. It was it's never coming back. The internet was just a scam and all this kind of stuff. And that's because those were really early examples that maybe didn't really actually fit with how we would end up using the internet, which was actually quite different. But fundamentally, the internet was a really powerful tool and ended up taking over the world. And in the same way, NFTs, we've used them in kind of like silly ways in the past. And there was kind of this hype that maybe wasn't deserved, as you kind of said. But that doesn't mean that the technology what an NFT is going away, or that like it's not useful. It's just, the first iteration of any technology is always kind of gimmicky, and then it advances from there to find a really strong product market fit.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think like any technology, you will have great use cases and bad use cases, basically. I think the one thing is that in a bull run, especially for NFTs, we've seen a lot of bad use cases where it was mostly for gains and whatnot. But the cool thing now that you are slightly more in the bear market, or like totally in the bear market actually for for some time now, in terms of NFTs mainly, is that you only have actors that really want to build like legit applications for it, because it doesn't work to make a quick buck out of an NFT collection anymore. It's like not viable at all. Last year, I think it was last summer, we were even in a state where the meta was free mints and no royalties. So basically you were like crafting some art and an avatar collection to make zero money in anywhere. Of course, it changed a bit since then, but it's interesting because right now we have people that mostly try to build like real use cases and real IPs, real brands around this concept. And I think that's super interesting and that will prevail. But yeah, 90% of some projects in the previous bull run, they don't necessarily want to build something long run. And I think with the internet or any technology, that's what you will see, right? When it first pops, you will see like, oh, okay, this is really cool. This is the fundamentals. I think cryptocurrency is exactly like that. The fundamentals of like building a decentralized apps, decentralized everything, for me, it's absolutely amazing. But when I look at the latest meme coin, I can lose sight a bit of those fundamentals. It's more like, oh, okay, what's amazing here is just to have something very simple where I can do a little bet online and maybe make some money, right? So you lose a bit this decentralized promise that you had initially, but it doesn't mean that it goes away on the long run. And I think that's this long run and long-term promise that will get us, that will for sure bring this technology to very good use cases. But we have the turbulences that comes with any new technology, basically.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. It's like that saying, hard times make strong men, easy times make weak men kind of thing. And in crypto, We've seen that over and over again. Like during a bull market, all kinds of Ponzi's and kind of nonsense comes to the top. And it's during the bear market when everyone's walked away from crypto that a lot of innovation's built. And actually,
100%.
that innovation ends up spurring another bull market later in the cycle. And so, what you're saying with NFTs is like, yeah, the height of the NFT bubble when everyone was excited about them, it's like you could just launch any silly collection, and it's like people are making millions of dollars. And now, today, like you can't do that. Fundamentally, people are really, really bearish on NFTs. So the only ones launching NFTs are people that have like deep convictions in what they're building, and they're actually building something real versus some kind of really easy, cheap product. So you launched an NFT collection in the middle of a bear market.
Yes.
Why? Like, what are you guys aiming to build?
Yeah, for us, it was quite key because we were in Web3 before, but we didn't really manage to federate, I would say, a community around the brand, basically. And we have this aspiration on the long run to build very strong entertainment IPs, brands, around games, which is our core expertise, and around communities like we've been doing so far. And we did that before launching Persona, but in a way that didn't necessarily enable us to federate a Web3 community. And that's, in my opinion, the beauty of an avatar collection, is that it's very easy to federate and to have an item that will automatically create this community online, because we all have a Persona as a PFP, so we are the Persona community, and we recognize each other and we build relationships, and that's how like it becomes really strong, basically. Before, with just a game and nothing to rally online, we didn't really have that, and it was kind of missing for us. And that's where Persona, the need at least, came from. Then, in terms of the art, in terms of what we crafted, it took like a really long time. We did 6 months of ideation, even more if we count like all the iterations we did on the base model, on the art style and everything, because we really wanted to craft something special for people, something that could resonate with people. But the initial need was really like, okay, now we want to build something bigger, a bigger ecosystem, more products. We want to do it around the brand that could rally people. And we want to start also building a stronger community online that can recognize each other and build stuff together, basically. So yeah, that's where Persona came from. We needed that very strong stepping stone, that very strong foundation for our building that we wanted to build, basically.
Yeah, I think you actually hit on a really good point, which is a lot of people have been saying that like meme coins are basically the natural evolution of NFTs, and I feel like that's like a really bad take, because NFTs are fundamentally very, very different from meme coins. The only thing they really have in common is like sort of this tribalism around a concept, right? Like, so like meme coins, you have like your meme, there's a tribalism and maybe like a really loose community around that, right? But again, it's very loose. Where NFTs have these you have exclusivity. So it's like you're really deeply joining a community, and the people that join those NFT communities are much more so involved from what I've seen. Like, it becomes a lot more part of their identity than maybe say a meme coin does. And it's a lot, in some ways it's kind of like a luxury item, right? Especially at the height of a bull market, people often use NFTs as like similar like a Rolex watch, or like a special a brand they love, or a Lamborghini or something like that. It's like almost like a flex, where you don't get that with meme coins, because like anyone could get in. Like anyone could get put a 10 cents into a meme coin and hey, they've joined. But like the value of them joining, or like the conviction of their joining, is a lot different than something like an NFT. So, I think you're highlighting that NFTs are a really great way to actually build this really interesting community of people that's a lot more powerful than, something like a meme coin.
Yeah, I think it's hitting the nail perfectly. I love what you say with tribalism. For me, it's too hard to say as a French guy, but but I think it's very much like that. Like for meme coins, it's more like tribal. It's. But I don't think indeed you have communities that share necessarily a lot of values. And I think for NFT communities, it's very different. And especially communities right now, because I don't think there are many people that are purchasing NFTs for gains, like for the last few months. So it's really interesting, because it's more people that reflect in the values that you have around your collection, around your brand, around your IP. And even if some NFT collections have like a big variance in terms of how polished and what they're trying to build, I think most of them at least have some core values, some core taglines, some core branding elements that will resonate with people or not. and people rally around that and can build stronger foundations around that. I think you don't necessarily have that around a lot of meme coins. And then what you said is totally true. Like it's you cannot brag about your meme coin bag as well as a very nice PFP if you have an Azuki, a Persona, a Bored Ape Yacht Club. I think it's something that resonates a lot more with people because you want to show those off. It's a bit. And like you said, in bull run, it becomes kind of a Veben good where it becomes like the more expensive it is, the more I need it, and it goes crazy. Right now, we're not in this stage, but I can absolutely see it's always cycles, right? And we've been in the meme coin cycle for a long time. I could absolutely see some people that cycle back to NFTs because at the end of the day, it's the shiny thing they always wanted to buy in a sense. It's a bit silly, but that's how I see it. Like you make gains on stuff that maybe you don't necessarily connect to, but I could absolutely see people making profits off meme coins and then be like, oh, but it would be really cool to have a Persona or to have an Azuki or to have this or that and actually make that purchase. Right now, I think people are too afraid because you only see curves that go down. But the moment we have a bit of momentum, I think it will change.
Yeah, everyone I talked to that was like a big NFT person last cycle, like deeply misses NFT culture, and they don't feel as satisfied with meme coin culture. And I actually think people, again, are really missing. They think like meme coins are like this natural evolution of altcoins or natural evolution of NFTs. They're just like the natural evolution of crypto in their minds. And I think that's just because they're really popular right now. But in my mind, the reason meme coins are popular, I actually have this really strong theory that like you had Solana go up in price. Because Solana went up in price, you had this wealth effect. People looked for good altcoins on Solana. There really just wasn't any at the time. And so it went all the way down to meme coins because, everyone's going to always look for the beta, right? Like Solana already went up. So like, oh, what's the next thing that's going to go up? And so all that was left really was meme coins. And there was some NFTs on Solana, and it actually went up a lot. Like I had a Mad Lad, it went from $2,000 to like $30,000. So it's like, and I think that's actually a hint at what's to come this cycle. So Solana played out a mini cycle because of this run up from $8 to $150. And I think you're going to see the same thing in the wider crypto market this cycle, where you're going to see, Bitcoin and ETH go up, then you're going to see the alts go up, and everyone's going to be looking for beta. So once the alts go up, people have a lot of money. They're going to say, hey, what's the next thing to go up? And they're going to look at NFTs. They're going to be like, man, these NFTs are really cheap, especially in comparison to how much money I've made now. And, like, even if they don't believe they're going to come back, they're going to say, what if they do come back? And because of that, they're going to start investing in it. And like anything, like altcoins or whatever, 99% of the previous generation's NFTs are not going to make it come back. They're just not. Yeah. You're going to have a few blue chips from last cycle, and then you're going to have a new entrant of NFTs that are actually fundamentally very different from last cycle's NFTs. In the same way that 2017's like tokens, a lot of them were just kind of fluff. And then 2021's batch, you had a lot of like actual products being built. And you mentioned IP and how Persona is maybe more than just, it's just more than just really, really good art. It's actually IP, brand, there's a game, there's a manga, there's like so much going on here. Can you kind of dive into like your approach to Persona? Because it's maybe most similar to Pudgy Penguins, but it is radically different than anything else that I've ever seen with NFTs before.
We definitely share some similarities with Pudgies. I think it's the idea of indeed building an IP and then building products around this IP to make it grow, basically. And that's why now our vision is more like a broader entertainment IP, because we don't see Persona as just a video game IP or just a merch IP or just a manga. It's mostly things we do that we think will expand basically the reach of the Persona brand and also expand it to different targets and different audiences. I think typically if you do a game, it's easier to do a game for Web2 crowd, but specifically for Web2 crowd, not necessarily trying to add a wallet and add everything of all the Web3 tools. And on the other side of the spectrum, I think it's also a lot easier to make a game specifically for Web3 users, basically, where you don't care about the wallet UX, you don't care about this or that, because you know that your crowd is Web3. And for us, that's a bit the strategy we have. Like we have a manga which is completely aimed for more of a Web2 traditional anime manga crowd that is outside of Web3. Like that's where we are on manga readers, on Reddit, and so on. We have a game that we planned specifically also for a Web2 crowd, a potential Web2 crowd. We want to be on Steam. We want to be compliant with all of that, to be out there and have the Persona brand out there. And we also have a game that we planned, but specifically for Web3 crowd. So there we won't try, to have a game that can welcome like 10 million of users and be compliant on Apple Store, Steam, and all that. There we want to cater more for a Web3 crowd that is there and is growing, and specifically for that. And that's why we think of the IP more on a 360 spectrum right now, because we feel it's kind of needed. If you only do things in Web3, then you can't have any growth. If you only do things in Web2, then you're a bit disconnected with your Web3 roots and your ambassadors and like the core people that made this brand and this IP what it was in the beginning. So now the idea is to move forward on those different bricks in parallel for that reason, to touch those different audiences.
I think it's a genius strategy, especially like the kind of the anime direction, because I mean, the people that love anime are obsessed. Like it is part of their identity. If you talk about tribalism and all that kind of stuff, like like they deeply, deeply love it. And I think of Sazzle. I know Sazzle, and he loves One Piece. It's like if you look at during his podcast, it's like he has all these like figurines around him from that show. And maybe when I look at Persona, maybe the most easy to understand for maybe people that aren't into different anime would be something like Pokemon, right? So Pokemon, they have this trading card game, they have their merch, they have their a game, like a video game is one of the most popular games of all time. When I was a kid, I used to play that all the time. They have a show. They have all these different elements around this IP, and it's a really powerful IP. And imagine if Pokemon was launched today as an NFT collection, and you know what I mean? Like, and you had your 150 Pokemon, whatever is an NFT collection, and you like own a piece of this IP in a way by having this NFT collection that is like this collectible. I mean, look at Pokemon. Some of these Pokemon cards that like sell for like I don't know, a couple $100,000. It's insane. And so it's within that same realm of, but instead of a physical collectible, instead of a physical asset, it's a digital asset, which is actually inherently a lot better if you think about it. Because like with a physical one, it can degrade. You have to actually go get it graded. There's can be fakes, and so there's like all these different problems with it. Where with something like an NFT, you can't have fakes. It doesn't degrade. You don't have to go get it graded. It's a lot more liquid and easy to sell than something like a physical Pokemon card. And so it's kind of within that realm, but it's this overall brand IP approach, rather than if Pokemon would have said, "Hey, we're just going to build a game and that's it," or "We're just going to do a show and that's it." You guys are saying, "Hey, no, this is an entire IP, and what Persona is building is actually much bigger than just an NFT collection or just a manga, just a clothing brand. It's really this huge, massive undertaking that is going to take a while to really gain steam and gain traction. But you guys have this really bold vision."
Yeah, I think it's important to be bold because out of all the things we mentioned, we've been long enough in product development and producing games and producing like different projects that we know not everything goes according to plan, and we know not everything will work, right? So it's also part of the strategy, to test a bit like, okay, where can we find the best future for Persona? And maybe some of the things I mentioned, like in 6 months, we'll chat again and we'll be like, oh, this didn't work. So we're happy we also went on other directions, because this worked really nicely and this didn't. But also at the same time, it's because there is, for us, there is something to reconcile between Web 2 and Web 3. And we did the mistake before to try to do some products that were too much in between, like that would cater nicely for Web2 crowd and also for Web3 crowd, but in the end you hit no one when you try that. So being more focused in each product that you do, really thinking about the audience, like the core audience. I'm a big fan of design thinking. It's a methodology from the Kelly brothers, like great guys. And I'm a big fan of this methodology because you always start with people. So you start with people and you try to understand like, okay, is there a desire for what I'm trying to build? Then you go to business and technical. Is it viable? Is it feasible? And when you start with people, it's always easier to design whatever you design, because you start with, okay, what do they want basically? It's rare that people know exactly what they want, but you try to analyze, okay, what for example, a Web3 crowd likes. They like social things. They like to augment their reach on social medias and so on. They like gains. They like to communities. They like to bond together. And they like to explore new technologies, like a lot of us in the Web3 space like that, to discover things. And like starting from this audience, you take all those needs, and then it becomes a bit easier to design a product for those guys, right? When you start from other points, it's like, okay, now we have a good business opportunity, for example, or, oh, technically we can do this. And you start there, it's usually a bit harder to know that, okay, this product might hit a crowd, might hit an audience, and it will work, And it's a bit what we did with Persona from the beginning, is to start to understand, like, okay, what's the audience for everything we're building here, and how can we craft something that will really like resonate and relate with them. And we have the same approach with the manga. We released the chapter 1 last week. We have the same approach in the design of the games and merch that we're doing next year.
What's crazy to me is, like, if you went back to 2021 and you were to have Persona on the market, I was telling you this before we started the podcast, you were to have Persona on the market in the NFT space in 2021, it would be easily top 3 NFT collection. And on top of that, like, easily, hands down, you guys would be doing more than any single NFT collection out there on the scene at that time. And so it really is crazy the amount of work and effort you guys have poured into it when it comes to all this. And that's one of the things that really has drawn me to Persona, is anytime you guys encounter a problem, instead of just giving up, you guys, you problem solve. You say, hey, let's try this. Let's experiment with this. And I remember, like, last cycle, people were so afraid of experimenting that you had collections that were like, okay, we got this really big new thing coming out. And then they would launch like just another new NFT collection that was like the same artwork. And like people are like, what? Like, what is this? And you guys are doing all this crazy stuff. So I don't know, I guess with NFTs, do you see that as maybe like the new meta is like, hey, this is about now building an IP. This is now about delivering, basically 100x more value than anyone could last cycle, and going this new direction. Is that how you see the NFT space evolving?
I would say yes. I think we need to do better than previous cycles. Otherwise, even myself personally, I would be disappointed. If we see the same flows, and if we see and it's funny because I remember last October, there were a lot of people that were calling for, okay, it's the NFT cycle is starting now, like it's here. It's like in the next few months it will be now. And when I was looking at every project, because back then we didn't launch Persona yet, so I was really worried, and I was observing absolutely every new project that was launching. Everything I was seeing, I was like, I don't think that's the next cycle, because I feel like we learned absolutely nothing from the previous one. And that didn't feel like, okay, now those projects are all mature and they will survive and we're proposing something new. Most projects were just the same kind of formula with a very, very vague vision, some storytelling to tease a bit. You have no idea what they're going to do next. They don't either, and post-mint, you're like, well, okay, what are you doing? You don't know, we don't know. For us, I think it was a bit different because we had this long-term vision already in mind. We had a big team already there. We had some funding before the mint, so we're not just reliant on the mint to survive. So we didn't make an NFT collection of necessity. It was part of a strategy, basically. So it was a bit different. And I think, yes, for the next cycle, we will have higher standards for collections that perform. But at the same time, if it's a bull run, we know how it goes. People will still invest in the new shiny thing, and that's it. For Persona, I think, we're a bit of an exception in the 2024 year. I don't know how many collections minted and survived and delivered as much as us. Not to brag, but just because I'm less also observing other collections at the moment in the past few months. But I think, yes, if we delivered that much in a bull cycle, it would have been very different, because in like 6 months we delivered a manga, staking, a platform with like 40 different features, a creators program. Like we could go on and on everything that we delivered, but we delivered a lot. And I think, I think absolutely, if we but it's also part of the game. For us, we never really focus on markets too much. We only focus on ourselves and what we can do, basically. Then, if people resonate with it, if it takes some heights, that's great. We were all up for it, and that's what we're trying to do. But if we release staking a token, it doesn't necessarily go according as planned. For us, we're like, oh, we did our best, and in other circumstances, it could have worked. But it doesn't change us from our long-term vision. We know what we want to build around Persona. We know what we are going for. So if it works, great. But if it doesn't, we are still strong believers in the vision. So we'll keep adding stones up until it does, basically.
So I really want to talk about the games and the manga and then the merch line you guys are doing and all this stuff. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the UNA token, because I think the UNA token, you guys launched it. I think it kind of underperformed your guys' hopes and expectations for
Absolutely.
it. It just was unfortunate that you guys launched it at the time when the market just also started dropping. So it's a little bit of bad timing there. What are you guys' plans moving forward with the UNA token? Because I know that's a big part of Persona's early vision was like, hey, you stake your Persona and you're going to be able to get this UNA token. So what's your guys' plans moving forward with the UNA token?
Yeah, to be fully transparent, it was a disappointing launch. For us, it was the next step after Persona to launch the token in great conditions and to have the token as a central piece of the ecosystem. We didn't achieve that in any way with the launch, if I'm being honest, for different reasons. We misjudged a bit some parameters. We misjudged a bit the market. We already had a very high circulating supply that penalized us a bit in moments where we could have thrived a bit more. But all in all, it was not a great launch, so we did reflect a lot on that to try to understand why and how we can do things better later on. We had the strategy to refocus on Persona and refocus on the growth of the IP mainly past that during this summer. And for the UNA, we will have use cases, but for us, it's quite important that now we tame expectations and that we create a more healthy basis for the UNA because after everything that happened this summer. And then once we feel it's in a great place to grow again, we'll communicate a bit more about it. But basically, we did a lot of marketing around it in June. We did the release. We chose some central exchanges that worked more or less as we expected, but more less than more. We had many things. We are missing also a strong additional utility linked to the token once it released. Staking came a bit too late. We had double staking that is coming in a couple of months, but that would have been better to maybe have it first. So, we did too many mistakes. So at some point when you do too many mistakes, what we like to do is just, okay, we leave it breathe for a few months. And then once we feel it's in a better, healthier place to grow again, we'll go back at it. But we still have the strong feeling that a token can be very useful and make a lot of sense in a Web3 NFT ecosystem, basically. But we don't want to force those utilities. We want them to feel natural, basically. I think in June we forced a bit too much. I think we've been quite advised, like, okay, you launch your collection, next stop is the token, because everybody was doing so. And when you're a bit stressed, when you work a lot, it's hard to sometimes take a step back and be like, oh, wait. I actually don't think that's the case, because we're just following that model that seemed to work for other projects. So we did exactly that, which I think was okay, but we lacked a stronger purpose to do it. I think if the token was cumulated with the release of another product, with some other utilities, rather than just being released as a logical next step, I think it would have been better, basically. So now that's what we aim for. We will add more things to it, that's for sure, more utilities, but we wait for a better timing and also a purpose that is clear and makes sense, basically.
Got it. So you guys are going to keep developing the token. You're going to keep bringing in utilities, but your focus is going to be expanding this IP, building these games, and the utility for the token will come with that. Rather than say focusing on just like number go up, which is like, it's impossible to control and you have no like long-term momentum. It's almost like a poly market approach, right? Poly market built for years years before they found product market fit, and now it's just gone through the roof. Like Polymarket is out of control. Presidents, Elon Musk, everyone's talking about Polymarket these days, and it's crazy. It's crazy, and they say it's like overnight success, but like they spent years building actual product and utility versus what a lot of projects that end up long term failing in the crypto space do, which is they just focus on a token and making the number go up. And so you guys are taking a stronger approach.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think focusing on products in general is a better approach, especially in the bear market. Like if we were now like spending all our ammunition, all our money just trying to make the token work and not focusing on producing stuff that creates value for the company, for the ecosystem, then I think we would be a bit doomed. But we're focusing on persona, and also, it's important that we recognize our strengths and our flaws. I think we are great at creating worlds, IPs, games, all of that. I think that's one of our strengths internally. I think we are not the best when it comes to token and promoting just on the more speculative side. I think we tried a bit to play that game, but it was not really us. It was not really our identity. For us, it's more like let's build something real, and then if we have utility for the token, it will come with it. It will make sense. You will be able to buy this or this game item with the UNA token, and that will be great. But just trying to create some more like fake hype around some speculative values. I think we're just not great at that, to be fair. So the idea is to really refocus on our strengths, refocus on what we do best, make sure that we bring persona into cool products, because the IP in itself resonates with a lot of people, and every time we show the brand to anyone we know, they like it, they want to see more of it, they want to see an anime, they want to see a game, they want to see all of that, and we're like, okay, but let's build the stuff that people want to see, Yep.
In some ways, when I look at the UNA token right now, I think it's currently sitting at 1.5 million in market cap. Last time I checked, I don't know that that's necessarily like a bad thing in some ways. For one, I think the token flopped. Maybe there was other stuff with supply side and stuff like that. But in general, like gaming tokens are just not hyped right now. There's not a lot of focus on gaming tokens, where that would fall. And until there is, I just don't see them performing that strong. And it's just also not like an alt season. So again, there's like those two factors I think kind of lead to like slower growth for alts or gaming tokens. But as soon as you have an alt run or you have a gaming token run, like they're all going to pop for one. And I think that lends in your favor, because even if you guys sucked, which you guys don't, but like say like UNA and you guys were like this making stupid games, because there's a ton of those in crypto. You guys are a bunch of like ex-Ubisoft developers, so that's not the case. But there's a ton of crypto games that are just like so gimmicky and stupid. I think they'll all pop if there's a gaming token run, because people are going to always look for the beta, and it inevitably leads, like people seek out any like even slight opportunity. And in that world, UNA sitting at 1.5 million, maybe you're like, oh man, this sucks. But like 6 months from now, you're like, whoa, because the whole market's watching UNA token because it went from 1.5 million to 150 million. And you couldn't have done that if you were down at 75 million. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when Solana went down to $8 and then all the way up to 150. The reason it was so noteworthy was because it went from 8 to 150. Originally, they were at $250. If they would have went from $250 down to 140 and then to 150, nobody would have cared. So there is something to be said about momentum, and like, hey, like what could be maybe a flop now could actually be a really awesome thing later down the line. So just wanted to throw that out there.
I fully agree. I think it's exactly that. And when I say we let it breathe a bit, it's that I think it's better to put it on the side a bit, and then you have more upside, and you try to come back with a stronger momentum, with more things in more ammunitions for it, rather than trying to make it survive like any way you can for too long, basically. And that's a bit our approach right now. I think right now it's very hard to make a gaming token exist. I would say it was also hard for an NFT collection to exist, and I think if you do it well enough, it can still be done despite market conditions. So even if market conditions are part of the explanation, we usually tend not to hide only behind it, because I think if we execute it perfectly on the token itself, maybe we took more time after the personal launch and all that, it could have still potentially performed. But all things combined, it didn't for now. But of course, we don't abandon him. Yeah, exactly.
Well, hey, I want to speed run through some of these things because there's a lot you guys are doing. So can we start with the games? And can you kind of just go into detail? What are you guys doing with the games? What are the games you guys are kind of releasing with Persona? And then from there, like wider Unagi, like what are your guys' focuses right now?
So I have to be careful about the games because we didn't yet release a lot of info about them. It's very cryptic and mysterious still. But there are basically two games in production right now. Plus a third one that we're trying to license with the Persona IP. So it's not a production that we would handle, but more like we give some licensing rights for Persona, and the game would use that. But the first two ones that we produce, the first one is a 3D game using Unreal, basically, and we do that with a partner that I don't think we talked about yet. It's not a very famous partner, but we do that with an external studio that we work in collaboration with. And that one, the idea is to depict for the first time the Persona IP in a 3D fashion with an art style that we feel could be a very good representation of what Persona could be in 3D. If we were going a bit the anime route, if we're going a bit in 3D games and all that, we want to showcase that for the first time. It's going to be quite a small scope game. We're not aiming for yet a huge open world because we've been producing game for a long time, and we know that if we aim for something too big, you will not see anything before 2028. And for us, it's important to try to deliver small bits faster, basically. So this 3D game, very small scope, and where we try to experiment a bit in terms of game design and to resonate on the let's say classic indie video game industry. We tried to experiment a bit with generative AIs, basically. So we did a lot of brainstormings and ideation around the idea to build a very innovative gameplay with generative AIs and the Persona IP. And so far, we have a concept that I really like. I can't yet fully reveal what it is because it's a bit too soon. But we have a concept that we really like. And we started working with quite a famous AI partner as well. So they provide some of the generative AI models, and we use that we configure on our side to create the gameplay. And all that will reveal more and more in the next few months. But right now, it's a bit the extent of what I can say.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It reminds me of Axie Infinity, or not Axie Infinity, but sorry, Ronin, and a lot of the games within that ecosystem, like you have Pixels, and I mean they have a ton of games. But when you look at like actually the crypto gaming ecosystems, it feels like, even though a lot of people aren't paying attention to Ronin, it feels like Ronin has by and far the most daily active users on their games, and most of those games are not AAA titles. They are like almost these mobile, like low graphics kind of games that are maybe focused more on gameplay than anything else. And when it feels like within the crypto gaming space, it's almost like everyone's saying, hey, when are we going to get this AAA game? And, that'll bring in the users. And you look at, Ronin, and they got like, I think at one month they had like 2 million daily active users across their games. And it's just these low quality, like low graphics games that, people are really loving. So I think that, is a smart, solid approach, especially when it comes to building out an IP. I feel like you guys are also building some sort of pixely kind of game too.
Yes, but the 3D game will not be low definition though. The one we're doing on Unreal is quite high prod value, and it will be your classic. We're more aiming for Steam platforms and PC gamers like that, like indie games. But yeah, and on the side, absolutely, we're also working on a web game. So this one is really tailored for a Web3 crowd, a Web3 audience. So it will be web because the Web3 audience is on web, so it's not necessarily on consoles or whatnot. It will be more on the pixel art type of art style, absolutely, just because it suits web games like really well in terms of performances, in terms of what you can do there. But we will still have our own twist to it and a strong link with the Persona IP. But it will be interesting because, between all the mediums that we develop, every time we have to reinvent a bit the art style. Like we did the manga, for example, and you could think, the manga in the collection, it's not that far. And I think it's clear that it's part of the same world, the same IP. But at the same time, you have a lot of codes that are specific to the manga. And it's the same when we developed the game. The 3D game, for example, we reinvented a bit the Persona IP, Anna, and so on in 3D. And for the web game, it's a similar exercise. And yeah, this one very, 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 very Web3 centric. We want a game that will be fun for the Web3 audience. The challenge is not to make it fun just for our community, but more like fun on a larger Web3 scale, so that the investor, the collector, the casual gamer that exists in Web3 could potentially have fun playing it, basically. So it plays on some social collaboration aspects. It plays on a bit on speculation, of course, a bit on social metrics, the fact that on exclusivity, all the little things I think that the Web3 crowd likes, and yeah, it will be fun. This one should be faster to produce. The 3D game, we have slightly longer timeline. We want to start releasing things like some teasers. I think in the next few months, but the full game, it's still a bit hard to know when it will release, even if we go for a small scope. For sure, 2025 max, I think, from what we're looking at. But will it be in June? Will it be after? We need to progress a bit more in the production to know. The web games, since it's faster to produce, and also we have all the expertise in-house. We've been building like multiple web platforms for 3 years at Unagi. So this one, we're a bit more confident that we can bring it early in 2025. Yeah. And yeah, soon will be fun. I wish I could say more. Next podcast we do together, I can probably go at length on what they are exactly, but today I need to be a bit cryptic still.
What about outside of Persona? Is Unagi as a studio working on any other games? I know you guys have your sports games, but yes. Outside of that, are you guys working on any other IPs or games?
Yeah, the sports games, we reduced the focus a bit. We did a shift at the company and we reduced the focus on those, mostly because with the license cost we had and a lot of other factors, actually, it could be an entire other podcast. But in the end, it was very hard to continue it at full scale, basically. We were putting a lot of rewards every year into it and so on. So we reduced a bit the reward and we reduced a bit the investment we have there. It's still live, it's still going, it's still up there, of course, but it was hard to focus on too many things. And the fantasy games we had before, it made less sense in the ecosystem we wanted to build specifically around Persona. So it's still there, it's still live, we continue them, but it's less of our core focus moving forward, basically. But outside of that, we also have we don't call it a merch line, we call it a fashion line, because that's how ambitious we are in everything we do. But we try to launch a bit Persona fashion as well. It's something we were thinking for a long time, but it was hard to kickstart it the correct way because, a lot of Web3 projects do merch, basically, and they do it in a very similar manner. Therefore, if you release your merch, it's hard to be impactful and to do it in a way that stands out, basically. So for us, we had a lot of thoughts on how can we build a fashion line more than merch with its own identity and its own soul, so that it can become more than just fan service for our community. Because if it's just to do fan service for our community, it's cool, but it's not expanding the brand. And I think all the Web3 merch is just fan service for communities. What we would like to do is to have something where we can go to fashion brands, we can have higher objectives, and it can be also part of the products that will expand the brand. So yeah, we're doing that. It's ongoing at the moment. We have a cool deal with a shop in Germany to do the first drop. So it's going to be a bit far for you, Jesse. But we have a cool deal there, and it's probably where we'll do our first drop. In a few weeks or months. And then on top of that, we have the manga that we discussed. That just released the first chapter last week. And it was a very nice reception. I think it resonated very nicely in the community in Web3. Now we try to take what we release and see if it can become more than that. Basically, see if we can also expand a bit more on the Web2 side there with publishers, with people that could really help us to scale it up in a more massive way.
The fashion line is like such an interesting angle, because maybe as you said, like other brands have done similar things. I've never seen anything similar, but I wasn't also a really big I wasn't really big in NFTs last cycle. But it does make a lot of sense because you guys have this really strong, you guys on your like art and like vibe side, like it's really a really strong feel. And you guys can tell, you guys are really curated in the direction you want to go. And I feel like it's got like such a strong retro kind of feel to it. And like just an interesting style that I could see people being like, ooh, I want to wear that. So it's so weird to me, but I actually think that could be one of these kind of out of nowhere product market fits. I'm definitely interested to see how it kind of plays out.
Yeah, I'm the same because it's not our expertise. It's not necessarily something that you would say is an obvious fit in any way for us. But I also have this weird feeling, like the brand could be very well suited for that, and we started experimented with patterns and a few sketches, and what we see so far, we really like it personally. So yeah, it's maybe one of those where in 6 months we meet again and we're like, but the fashion, it didn't really work out. But it's interesting to pursue it a bit and see if the brand could be applied there. So something else we could do in the future also to develop on that side, but not necessarily ourselves, will be to just have licensing deals with Persona once it gets a bit bigger for manufacturers and so on to craft some stuff with the IP. Actually, funny story, we had a fairly similar opportunity that came, I think, in May, like very shortly after we minted, basically. But for us, it was kind of hard to give the license away and not be in charge of anything from the creative pipeline. On the creative pipeline, basically, it was very soon. The IP was very new, and it was kind of hard to say like, oh yeah, take it, we'll take 10% and roll with it, because we wanted to control the quality, we wanted to control everything that came out of Persona at that time. So I think it's a possibility that we have such opportunities again in the future, but we'll want to be sure that we develop the IP to be its own thing in a stronger fashion before him.
Yeah, and this is why you guys feel so similar to Pudgy Penguins, because like they have their like Pudgy, plushies and like all. It's like a weird thing. People are like, why is Pudgy Penguin launching like kids toys? But it ended up being this huge success and actually really, really good overall for the brand. And so it's another really interesting direction. You guys are doing a Persona clothing line. I'm actually really excited to check it out and see how it turns out. As far as just kind of wrapping this up, when do you personally, so I kind of said, kind of late cycle, I feel like later, once we've had this kind of wealth effect in crypto, that's when I kind of see NFTs making a comeback. Is that, do you agree with that? Like, hey, later in the cycle, as wealth pours into the space, we'll see NFTs come back? Or do you not even care about that? And you guys are like, hey, I don't, it is not about when NFTs come back or when they won't. It doesn't matter. Persona is going to succeed regardless because of what we're building. Yeah,
I would say as a founder, I have to force myself not to care about it. Otherwise, it's you might end up making bad decisions if you try to time the market, So we try not to think too much about it, but of course we still monitor, and we're NFT collectors as well ourselves, So we have some collections outside of Persona, and we've been following the development of it all for some time. So yeah, we absolutely monitor that. I think it will make a comeback. I think there are very positive signs as well that it could make a comeback. We have less and less, I think, blur farming that could have been a bit negative, I think, for the space. We have more and more consolidation, I think, of some projects. It didn't go down too much, I think, in the last couple, like very recently. So I think I could see a cycle that comes back. There are a few things that are needed, in my opinion, to achieve it. It's very personal, but I think, for example, in the last bull market, what people loved, and that ironically went over to meme coins, is that they love the simplicity of NFTs and the simplicity of trading NFTs. Like compared to tokens, ironically, back then it was like, oh, NFTs are cool because you have a floor price, and if 10 people buy my NFT, then the floor price goes up, right? And I think all of that, we completely lost it at the end of the bull run and in the bear market with the complexification of all the NFT trading. Basically, now you have bids, you have offers, you have blur farming, you have points, you have all that essentially for a newbie to come in and just buy an NFT, it's very much harder to understand the economics behind why this project would go up. And I think we go back to a simpler state at the moment, progressively. But from what I've seen, we start going back there with people that go out of Blur, that people that go out of some of the systems that were not necessarily positive, I think, for the space and NFTs. And as we get to a simpler state, I could see people going back to NFTs. I think at the end of the day, it's also funnier to collect NFTs. I think it's funnier to look at traits. It's funnier to look at art. You can find something that relates to you, that feels precious, that feels unique, as we discussed in the beginning. So all that didn't go away. I think it's just buried against like below little complex layer, and as soon as we remove that layer, we'll go back to NFT cycle, I think.
What do you hope Persona will become in the next 5 to 10 years? Like imagine, 10 years down the line, you've been building this IP, you've been building these games. What do you hope Persona evolves into?
Yeah, I think my dream would be to be a flagship entertainment IP. It sounds it sounds a bit generic, but I think to get there as a Web3 project, it will be a challenge, because we don't want to just be a flagship entertainment IP in Web3, but more globally, basically. And I think an IP born in Web3 can absolutely achieve that. I think we've made great strides when you look at, again, Azuki, Pudgy, and we're making great progress towards that direction as well. So I hope we get there. I would love that we have a fully fledged anime, that we have a fully fledged manga. We didn't talk too much about the story of Persona, but we started like developing it in the manga and around a lot of social media assets and a lot of IP elements we released for the last year. And we have such a rich universe and world that we would love to cover, So the manga is great because it's one way to achieve that in the short term, so we already started. But if you ask me in 5 years, if we have a fully fledged anime, narrative games that cover that, the manga that is maybe in its 500th chapter, that's what I would love for the world, for the IP to be developed and resonate with as many people in the world as possible.
So, like, I guess maybe a comparison would be like, you guys hope that in 10 years, like, it's similar to something like Pokemon or One Piece or Dragon Ball Z, or like those are the only animes I know. So forgive me, but like, like these really widely known popular culture animes, it'd be something like that, like where it's like this entire universe that's like widely known, this IP built off the back of Persona.
Yeah, I think Pokemon is a very good comparison. It's of course like the godlike comparison. Like if we have only
the ultimate,
only 10%, of that, it would be amazing. But yeah, I think that's the goal. It's to develop an IP throughout different products that will have different purposes, different meanings, different audiences, and maybe some will work, some won't. We'll see, but we'll experiment until we find what we're looking for. But Persona has this quality, has this potential, I think, as a brand to reach those heights. So we want to try our best to get there. Yeah.
As always, now this is investment advice. Crypto is risky, and you should always do your own research. And just as a disclaimer, I have some UNA tokens. I didn't buy those UNA tokens. I got those from staking my Persona NFTs. But I do own a ton of Persona NFTs. So I think I have close to like 100 of them now. So I'm like, I'm one of the top holders of Persona NFTs at this point. So I definitely have some sort of bias. You can definitely tell I'm very bullish on it throughout this conversation. That makes sense. I would only own that much if I was bullish, but take that with a grain of salt, I guess, as you will. And remember that the number one rule in crypto is you got to just stay in the game. You gotta not lose. You got to never die, and just have a strategy, be patient, and let the market come to you.